Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to be talking about Chapter 3, Phrase Elements and Special Characters. First thing we're going to be talking about is an introduction and some common elements when it comes to phrase elements. First off, let's define what phrase elements and symbols are. Phrase elements add emphasis to inline elements, bringing attention and speech pattern modifications to standard text, making it more semantic. They can also be used to provide variation between computer codes, mathematical equations, legal symbolism, special foreign characters, and even symbols and emoji. It even allows for SEO aspects like time abbreviations, keyboard inputs, and quotations. But even if you were to look at this slide by itself, it looks a little boring. Let's spice it up with some semantic phrasing elements. Now this looks a little better. First off, you can see the word emphasis has been bolded and the word inline inline elements has been italicized. That certainly draws your attention, but not as much as how much those items will be modified when spoken through speech processing software. On top of that, you can see in the second area we have items that are modified in font, modified in spacing and placement, along with symbols, foreign characters, and even special characters. Below that, we also have the SEO aspects, so that search engines can tell what the difference is between a certain time, an abbreviation, or even what inputs and quotations are on the page. Enough of this defining, let's get into the actual aspect of it. First thing is 4 common phrase elements that you'll be dealing with during your development career. First thing is you have B and I, which usually stand for bold and italic. These are items that are used to draw attention to the text. Before HTML5, B stood for bold or also bring attention to, and I stood for italicize, and they did exactly just that. Unfortunately, there have been some modifications with HTML5 and things have changed a little differently. After HTML5, these things do the exact same effect visually, but there have been no changes in the importance of the text. After HTML5, we have things that are the replacement of B and I, although B and I are still used, but in this case we have strong and EM. They convey a higher importance of text, indicating actual meaning. Otherwise, every single sentence would sound exactly the same with no emphasis or change on the text whatsoever. But now that you have modifications in the text, you can tell which text is important and which text isn't. This exists only in HTML5 and beyond, and assistive technologies like screen readers can make text important or strong or emphasize text instead of just making it very monotone. Now, compare the sentence, I never said that she stole my money. If you have done any research on the internet whatsoever, chances are you have run into this sentence. By modifying the item that is being emphasized, the whole entire definition of the sentence changes. Let me give you a few examples. I never said that she stole my money. I never said that she stole my money. I never said that she stole my money. And the last one, I never said that she stole my money. So depending on exactly what is being emphasized depends on how the phrase or the statement can be interpreted. For abbreviation, when you're using something that has an abbreviation such as an acronym, you can use the ABBR tag. This common example is SEO. Chances are a lot of people don't know what SEO stands for. They could just call it SEO if they wanted to. But actually this is an acronym that has a definition for search engine optimization. And to put this into an HTML tag or a page, you can use the ABBR element. There is no predefining by itself whenever you wrap something in an ABBR tag or abbreviation tag, so it is highly recommended to use the title attribute and give that title attribute the value for what the acronym stands for. That way, since there's no predefining by itself, as soon as you add the title attribute, it adds it, people will hover over the item and can see exactly what it stands for. In this case, search engine optimization. In the page itself, it still says SEO, and that's perfectly fine. Next, we have citation. This is used to cite a creative work, such as poem, essay, book, musical score, yada yada yada, all the other stuff, that is basically a creative work. By default, this is shown as an italic, but there are no attributes to the cite element. This is purely for citation of a creative work. There's nothing else to it. Quotations. Quotations are great because they are short inline quotes. You can use the cite attribute to specify a source of the quotation, and most browsers add physical quotations around the item that is in the Q tag. If you compare the code to the browser output, you can see that the code does not have quotations around the items that are actually being quoted, but the browser in this case does produce those quotes. Nice little feature added by the browser. If you just put the Q or the quote tag by itself, the browser may or may not put the quotation tags around it, but it doesn't know exactly where this came from. So if search engines were to find this quotation, they won't allow a reference to the resource that it came from. The small tag. This makes the surrounding text one size smaller than the text around it. Now keep in mind, one size smaller can vary by browser. This is used for side comments, copywriting, or legal text, but there is no item that you should have wrapped in a small tag that should be used for styling itself. We can use CSS for that. But just to make things smaller from the actual text, you can use a small tag. That's perfectly fine. Next is the time, and this is probably one of the more complicated HTML5 tags. It's great because you can tell search engines and browsers exactly what is a time and what the time is. For example, if you were to say 8:30, does that mean 8:30 p.m. tonight, 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. this morning, 8:30 a.m. 2 years from now? The browser and the search engine doesn't know how to process that. So by using the time tag, you can wrap a time text in it and specify the time using the datetime attribute. There is no predefined styling by itself. It is purely semantic to give browsers and search engines a way to process this information. Now, let me give you a little quiz. Take a look at this right here. What is this date and time? I'll give you a few seconds to take a look at some of the answers and think of what it is to you, what this means. Have an answer? Well, the answer is, I don't know. I'm not saying that I don't know, I'm saying that there's no way to interpret this specific string of numbers. Because based on where you are, based on when you are, and based on basically how things are read, this string of numbers could be anything. Let me explain. To take the same string of numbers in America, you're going to have the idea of the month, day, and year for America, right? That would be May 7th, 2006 at 8:02 a.m., just assuming based on the fact that there's no AM or PM after the time. In the UK, they flip it up. Instead of month, day, year, it's day, month, year. So this same string of numbers is July 5th, 2006 at 8:02 a.m. Again, assumed since there's nothing after the time. In Japan, this could be July 5th, 1992 at 8:02 a.m. because they have a 24-hour clock. But additionally, their years start with the imperial calendar, which basically means that whenever an emperor takes over, their year system, as far as their imperial calendar system goes, starts at 1. So for example, the current emperor is, well, the imperial calendar is the Heisei calendar. So Heisei year 1 is 1988. Add 6 years, that's 1992. So Heisei 6 is 1992. It could be a time zone difference. So what could be 8:02 p.m. here could be 1:02 a.m. elsewhere. Plus 5 hours, minus 5 hours, plus or minus a day. It's really hard to tell. On top of that, if you're looking at this from a technical standpoint, this could be July 6, 2005, meaning that it uses the year, month, and day and 24-hour timestamp. So, again, what's the correct answer? They all could be correct, they all could be incorrect. It just depends on where you are and you're looking at the time itself. For the date time attribute, you have a lot of different values to put in. For example, you have complete date, complete time, date and time, duration, time zone, period, which is alternate to duration, year and month, year and week, year only, or even a yearless date with no time. All of these values are valid, and if you're going to use them, make sure you know how to use them, because otherwise, well, you could be telling the search engine your event is 2 years in the past. So it just depends on exactly how you have things set up and how you're putting them into the code. There are plenty of other examples. This is just probably the top, top 10 list right now. And this gives you a good overview about how things are for the datetime attribute. For the var tag or variable tag, this is used to state variables such as computer programming or mathematical expressions, and commonly displays in italics. There aren't really any attributes to the var tag. That's quite okay, because all you're doing is defining a variable in the code. Word break. This allows the browser to take a break from a word where it would normally not. If you recall from before, using line breaks, we are forcing line breaks into the browser code. In this case, we're telling the browser where it's okay to break a word. Now, if you take a look at the picture on the right, you see this super long word, which is actually a town name in the UK, holds the Guinness World Record for the longest town name in the UK. And we're actually going to use the WBR tag to break it, or tell the browser where it can be broken when it actually wraps things around. So if you go to this place, and please by all means go to that YouTube link and actually hear how it's spoken, because I cannot save it, or I cannot say it to save my life. If you go there, please take a picture. But again, the word break tag allows the browser to know exactly where it can break a word if it needs to, versus using a brand new long line. Okay, that is it for this part of Chapter 3. We still have a lot more to cover, but please, if you have any questions about phrase elements or how to use them, send me an email or hit me up on Twitter. I will certainly get back to you the best I can with hopefully the answer you're looking for.